If you've been betrayed, listen to this story. In the heart of a lush forest, where the sunlight filtered through the leaves and the gentle hum of nature filled the air, lived a small bird named Jake. Jake was no ordinary bird. His song was a melody of hope and joy that touched the hearts of every creature in the forest. From dawn till dusk, his vibrant tunes echoed through the woods, earning him admiration from squirrels, deer, and even the gruff old owl perched in the ancient oak. Jake's gift was not just his voice. It was the kindness and sincerity that radiated from every note. Despite his gentle nature, Jake was not naive. He understood that not all creatures celebrated his talents with equal enthusiasm. Among the forest's many residents, one stood out for her sharp wit and unpredictable demeanor, Lena, the jackdaw. Lena had been Jake's closest companion since they were hatchlings. They had grown up exploring the forest together, sharing countless adventures. However, as they matured, a subtle tension began to brew between them. Lena's sharp eyes often glinted with something Jake couldn't quite name, a shadow of jealousy that occasionally clouded their bond. Unaware of the depth of Lena's feelings, Jake trusted her completely. To him, she was more than a friend. She was family. They would spend hours talking about their dreams under the canopy of stars, imagining worlds beyond the forest. Lena, with her quick mind, often pointed out opportunities for Jake to share his gift with others, and he followed her advice without question. Life in the forest seemed idyllic, yet Jake often felt a peculiar emptiness in Lena's laughter, as though her happiness was somehow tethered to his own. He dismissed these thoughts, telling himself that trust was the foundation of their friendship. Little did he know, Lena's heart harbored a growing storm. The forest community adored Jake, and many sought his companionship. His melodies were more than just songs. They were a source of comfort and strength. Animals who faced challenges would often seek him out, finding solace in his presence. Jake embraced these moments, feeling his purpose deepen with every life he touched. But shadows lingered in places sunlight could not reach. Lena watched from afar, her admiration for Jake slowly giving way to envy. She yearned for the adulation he received, for the spotlight that seemed to follow him wherever he flew. Though Jake remained oblivious to her inner turmoil, Lena's jealousy began to grow, silently threatening the very bond they had cherished for so long. As the forest prepared for another vibrant season, change was on the horizon. Jake, with his heart full of trust and a song for every soul, stood on the precipice of a trial he could never have foreseen. The forest, once filled with the harmonious rhythm of life, began to hum with a new kind of tension. Jake noticed it first in the way some animals avoided his gaze or hurried away when he approached. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but as the days turned into weeks, the warm greetings he had grown accustomed to were replaced by sidelong glances and whispers that followed him wherever he flew. The realization stung. Jake's once unwavering confidence began to waver as doubts crept into his heart. Had he unknowingly offended someone? Had his songs lost their charm? His usual perch, where he often sang to an audience of delighted creatures, now felt desolate and cold. Jake, ever hopeful, resolved to find answers, believing in the goodness of his friends and neighbors. Unbeknownst to Jake, Lena had woven a web of deceit that ensnared the hearts of the forest animals. Fueled by her growing envy, she began to whisper poison into their ears. "Jake only sings to bask in your admiration," she said with feigned concern. "He doesn't care about your struggles. He only wants to be adored." Her words dripped with cunning, and her sharp tongue spun lies that planted seeds of doubt in even Jake's closest allies. At first, the animals were hesitant to believe Lena's claims. Jake had always been a beacon of kindness, a friend to all. But Lena was relentless, carefully choosing moments when Jake wasn't around to reinforce her narrative. Slowly, doubt spread like a shadow over the forest. Animals who once found solace in Jake's songs now questioned his sincerity. Jake, unaware of Lena's betrayal, struggled to understand the shift. He sought solace in their friendship, turning to Lena for advice. "Something feels wrong," he confessed one evening, as they perched side by side on a low-hanging branch. "I feel like I'm losing the trust of the forest. Do you think I've done something to upset them?" Lena tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Maybe they've grown tired of hearing the same songs, Jake," she said, her voice laced with false sympathy. "Perhaps it's time to step back, let others take the stage for a while." Jake's heart sank at her suggestion. The idea that his gift, which he had always used selflessly, could have caused harm, was a heavy burden to bear. "You might be right," he murmured, his once bright spirit dimming. As the days passed, Jake's song grew quieter. The forest animals, confused and unsure of what to believe, continued to distance themselves. Jake, in his innocence, clung to the hope that things would return to normal. But the truth was far from his grasp, buried under Lena's carefully constructed facade. Though the forest symphony persisted, it was missing its brightest note. And in its absence, Jake found himself alone, a shadow of the bird he once was, unable to fathom the depth of the betrayal he was about to uncover. Jake's once bright world had grown dimmer with each passing day. The forest, his sanctuary, now felt alien. The silence that greeted his songs was deafening, and the weight of rejection pressed heavily on his wings. Determined to find clarity, Jake decided to confront his fears and seek the truth. He visited the places where he had once been welcomed with open wings, near the stream where deer gathered, the berry bushes where squirrels chattered, and the shady grove frequented by the wise old owl. But the reactions were all the same. Conversations hushed, gazes averted, and animals dispersed as if his presence carried a shadow. Jake's heart ached with confusion. Finally, he approached the owl, whose wisdom he had always admired. "Owl," Jake began hesitantly, "I feel as though the forest has turned against me. Have I done something wrong?" The owl's sharp eyes softened with pity, but his response cut deep. "It's not what you've done, young one, but what they believe you've done. Rumors have a way of spreading like wildfire, and the truth is often left behind in the ashes." Jake's feathers ruffled uneasily. "Rumors? About me? What could anyone possibly say?" The owl hesitated before answering. "Lena has been speaking ill of you, Jake. She's told the forest that your songs are not gifts of kindness, but tools for vanity and manipulation." Jake's breath caught, disbelief clouding his mind. "Lena, my best friend, she wouldn't—" The words felt foreign on his tongue, as if even saying them was a betrayal of the bond they shared. But as the owl continued, the pieces began to fall into place. "Friendship can be complicated," the owl said gently. "Jealousy can twist even the strongest of ties. I believe she's struggling with her own feelings, and you, dear Jake, became the target of her pain." Jake's chest tightened as a storm of emotions brewed within him. Hurt, anger, confusion, and a profound sense of loss. He left the owl's perch and flew straight to Lena, determined to confront her and uncover the truth. He found her near the edge of the forest, her sharp beak pecking absent-mindedly at the bark of a tree. "Lena," Jake called, his voice trembling, "I need to speak with you." She turned, her expression guarded. "Jake, what's wrong?" she asked, feigning ignorance. "Is it true?" he demanded. "Have you been spreading lies about me, telling the forest that I sing only for admiration?" For a moment, Lena hesitated, her eyes darting away. But then, with a smirk that Jake had never seen before, she replied, "And what if I have? It's not like anyone would believe you over me now." Jake's heart shattered. The friend he had trusted above all others had betrayed him not by accident but by design. The weight of her words crushed him, and for the first time in his life, Jake felt utterly powerless. Without another word, Jake spread his wings and flew. Higher and farther than he ever had before, he sought refuge in the only place that could match the emptiness in his heart, the vast, open sky. As he soared, tears blurred his vision, but one thing became clear. His life in the forest, as he had known it, was over. High above the forest, where the winds carried only silence, Jake perched on a craggy outcrop. The endless sky stretched around him, its vastness reflecting the hollow ache in his chest. For the first time in his life, Jake was truly alone. The betrayal had carved a wound so deep that even the thought of returning to the forest felt unbearable. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of crimson and gold, Jake's thoughts churned like stormy waters. He replayed Lena's smirk, her cutting words echoing in his mind. How had he missed the signs? The fleeting moments of jealousy, the edge in her voice when others praised him, it all seemed so obvious now. But why? He whispered to the empty sky. Why would she do this? What did I do to deserve her hatred? Jake's questions remained unanswered as the night enveloped him in darkness. The stars blinked coldly above, offering no solace. For hours he sat in silence, the betrayal gnawing at his spirit. Slowly a realization began to take shape in his mind. Lena's actions, cruel as they were not about him. They were about her, her insecurities, her struggles, and her need to be seen. Jake sighed, his breath visible in the crisp night air. I can't control what she feels, he murmured, but I can control how I let it affect me. The words were simple, but they carried a profound truth. As dawn broke, Jake watched the first light spill over the horizon. It was as if the world itself was reminding him of the inevitability of new beginnings. He spread his wings and flew, not toward the forest, but toward the river that wound its way through the valley below. When he landed by the water's edge, Jake peered at his reflection. His feathers, once vibrant, looked dull under the morning sun. His eyes, once bright with joy, were clouded with sorrow. But beneath the surface of his pain, Jake sensed something stirring, a flicker of resilience. He thought of the forest animals who had turned their backs on him, and for a moment, bitterness threatened to take hold. But then, he remembered the countless times his songs had brought them comfort. Those memories softened the edges of his hurt. I sang for them because it made me happy, he reminded himself, not because I wanted anything in return. Jake took a deep breath, the cool morning air filling his lungs. If I let this pain define me, I'll never find my way back to myself, he said aloud. With the river murmuring softly at his feet, Jake resolved to reclaim his song, not for the forest, not for its animals, and certainly not for Lena. He would sing for himself, for the joy it brought, and for the healing it promised. The betrayal had shaken him to his core, but Jake refused to let it break him. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew this. He would rise, one note at a time, until his voice soared once more. As Jake lingered by the riverbank, the morning unfolded in quiet serenity. The world around him seemed alive with whispers of renewal. The gentle rustle of leaves, the babbling of water over smooth stones, and the faint hum of distant birds. It was as if nature itself encouraged him to take the next step forward. Yet Jake remained still, grappling with the remnants of his sorrow. Just as the sun climbed higher into the sky, casting golden rays across the valley, a shadow flitted overhead. Startled, Jake looked up to see a large bird descending gracefully. Its feathers shimmered like polished onyx, and its eyes glinted with a wisdom that seemed ageless. The bird landed nearby, folding its wings with an elegance that matched its imposing presence. "Good morning, young one," the bird said, its voice deep and soothing. Jake blinked, unsure how to respond. "Good morning," he managed, his voice hesitant. "I've been watching you," the bird continued, its gaze unwavering. "You carry a heavy burden, one that could either ground you or teach you to soar higher than ever before. Which will it be? The question caught Jake off guard. I don't know, he admitted, lowering his eyes. I've lost everything. My friends, my trust in others, even my own confidence. How can I soar when I don't even know where I belong anymore? The bird tilted its head thoughtfully. Belonging is not a gift others bestow upon you, it said. It is something you claim for yourself. And confidence, it grows not in the absence of hardship, but through it. Tell me, Jake, why do you sing? Jake hesitated, the answer buried beneath his pain. I sang because it made me happy, he said at last, because it made others happy. But now, I'm not sure if it matters anymore. The bird chuckled softly, a sound like the distant roll of thunder. Happiness, young one, is never meaningless. It is the thread that weaves purpose into our lives. Sing not for others' approval or even their understanding. Sing because your voice is a gift, one that the world needs, whether it acknowledges it or not. Jake felt a spark ignite within him, faint but unmistakable. But what if no one listens, he asked. The bird spread its magnificent wings, their span blocking out the sun for a moment. Then let the wind carry your song. Let the trees dance to it and the rivers hum along. Even if no one listens, your song will still matter. For in singing, you reclaim yourself. With those words, the bird lifted off, its powerful wings stirring the air. As it soared into the sky, Jake felt a profound stillness settle over him, followed by a surge of clarity. The bird's words resonated deeply, illuminating a path forward. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Slowly, he began to hum, a melody born not from obligation, but from his heart. The notes wove together, light and pure, carrying with them the first hints of healing. For the first time since the betrayal, Jake felt something shift within him. It wasn't complete, but it was a beginning, a step toward reclaiming not just his song, but the joy it brought. Jake's song rose with the sun, filling the valley with a melody that was both familiar and new. It carried the essence of his past joy, tempered now by the strength he had found in his pain. Though his voice wavered at first, unsure and fragile, it grew steadier with each passing note. The river seemed to respond, its gentle murmurs harmonizing with his tune, while the wind carried his song to the farthest reaches of the valley. As days turned to weeks, Jake's routine shifted. He woke each morning with a purpose, not to impress, not to win back the forest's favor, but to reconnect with the part of himself that the betrayal had tried to silence. His melodies became his solace, a quiet declaration of resilience that reminded him of the beauty still present in the world. During his journey, Jake encountered other creatures who had heard his song and been drawn to its sincerity. A weary sparrow, battered by storms, landed beside him one afternoon, seeking shelter and comfort. Your song reminded me that there's still hope, she said softly. Jake welcomed her company, sharing his story and listening to hers. Word of Jake's presence spread, though not in the same way it once had in the forest. It wasn't the admiration of crowds that reached him, but individual creatures seeking the same healing his voice had brought to their hearts. A porcupine, injured and reclusive, shuffled toward him one evening, drawn by the warmth in his song. A fox with a broken spirit found courage in the notes that danced through the twilight. With every interaction, Jake felt his strength return, not the naive confidence of his past, but a grounded assurance born of experience. He realized that his voice had always been more than a gift. It was a bridge that connected hearts, even in the face of pain. One day, as Jake perched on a low branch overlooking the river, he saw a familiar figure approaching. It was the owl from the forest, his wings gliding effortlessly through the air. He landed beside Jake and regarded him with a mixture of pride and curiosity. "You've changed," the owl observed. Jake nodded, his eyes reflecting the journey he had endured. "I've learned that my song isn't for others to define," he said. "It's a part of who I am, and that's enough." The owl nodded approvingly. It's rare to see someone rise from betrayal with grace rather than bitterness. You've turned your pain into something beautiful, Jake. Not many can say the same. As the owl took flight again, Jake felt a quiet contentment settle in his heart. He looked around at the valley that had become his sanctuary and realized that while he still missed the forest, he no longer yearned for the approval of those who had doubted him. The creatures who visited him were not drawn by gossip or spectacle. They came because his song resonated with the truth they sought within themselves. Jake's journey had transformed not only his voice, but his purpose, and the healing he offered was as much for himself as it was for others. With the setting sun casting a golden glow across the landscape, Jake sang once more, his voice unshaken and filled with a quiet power. The valley seemed to hum in harmony, a living testament to the resilience of a heart that refused to break. The days grew longer, and with them, Jake's song reached new heights. The valley had become his home, a place of healing and renewal. Yet, the lessons he had learned were not confined to its borders. His melodies, carried by the wind, began to drift beyond, finding their way back to the forest he had left behind. One evening, as the sky blushed with the colors of dusk, Jake noticed a figure approaching from the distance. His heart stirred with recognition. It was Lena. Her once proud posture was replaced by a hesitant gait, her head lowered as if weighed down by something heavier than shame. Jake watched silently as she drew closer, until at last she stopped a few paces away. "Jake," she began, her voice trembling, "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I've come to ask for it anyway." Jake tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Why now, Lena?" he asked gently. "What brought you here?" Tears welled in Lena's eyes. "Your song," she admitted. "Even after everything I did, it reached me. It reminded me of who you are, of the friend I betrayed. I've spent so long envying you, Jake, but I see now that my jealousy blinded me. I let my own insecurities destroy our friendship, and for that I am truly sorry." Jake let her words settle, his own heart a mixture of emotions. The hurt she caused could not be erased, but as he looked at her, he saw not the betrayer, but a soul burdened by regret. "I forgive you, Lena," he said, his voice steady. "Not because what you did was right, but because holding on to anger would only chain me to the past. Forgiveness is the freedom I choose, for both of us." Lena's tears fell freely now, and for the first time in a long while, her expression softened with relief. "Thank you, Jake," she whispered. "I hope one day I can earn your trust again." Jake nodded, though he knew their bond would never return to what it once was. Forgiveness did not demand forgetting, and trust, once broken, took time to rebuild. Still, he felt no bitterness. The journey he had undertaken had reshaped his understanding of pain, loss, and healing. As Lena departed, Jake remained by the river, the evening air cool against his feathers. He reflected on how far he had come, from the depths of despair to a place of peace and purpose. His song, once an offering to the forest, had transformed into a beacon of hope for all who heard it, including himself. The valley thrived under Jake's presence. Animals came not to idolize him, but to share in the solace his melodies offered. The sparrow, the porcupine, the fox, all had found their own strength through his example. Jake had become a symbol not of perfection, but of perseverance. One morning, as he perched on his favorite branch, Jake looked out over the valley and saw a gathering of animals from the forest. They stood at the edge, hesitant yet hopeful. Among them were familiar faces, friends who had once turned away. They had followed his song, drawn not by obligation, but by a yearning to reconnect. Jake welcomed them with a song, one that carried the lessons of his journey, It spoke of betrayal and forgiveness, of pain and healing, of falling and rising again. The animals listened, their hearts moved by the sincerity of his voice. In that moment, Jake realized the true power of his gift. His song had not just healed him, it had created a space where others could find their own paths to renewal. The forest, the valley, the world itself seemed brighter as Jake's melody filled the air, a reminder that even in the darkest times, determination and grace could lead to light.